Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Future Proof Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Muller, and I got a really exciting guest today. And so first, I want to welcome everybody that's just tuning in. Welcome to Future Proof. This is the podcast where we decode how founders and execs are scaling smarter by using systems, AI, automation. So if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're in the right place. So today's guest is Phil Kosak from Carolina Fine Snacks. And Phil's the founder and has been doing a really cool things in growing the brand and streamlining your operations. So Phil, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brent. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. So the first thing that we always do is tell us about your whole background, right? And leading up to this. You're an entrepreneur by nature, so let's talk through it.
Yeah, I think so. I was going to school at the University of Georgia. I got a PhD in food science, and I worked my way through school, so took the first job that was offered to me because I was hungry, and got a job at Frito-Lay. And I think that was where the entrepreneurial issues or challenges I have. Sometimes I'll tell you about what I think an entrepreneur is, or the translation, but the naivety of things is I go to a company that's got 90% of this and 95% of that, and I don't like I like to get things done. You know, I was the kid that had the lemonade stand when everybody else was out horsing around and stuff. And before I got used to a paycheck, I said, I got to get out of here. And I would hear these things about, you got 95% of this business, that, and I'd say, well, I can get 1% of anything.
Yeah.
That was my first naive thought. And I literally left with a couple $100 and started frying pork skins. I'd never been. We landed in Greensboro, North Carolina, and so a lot of people, I was a student, so I studied. I had access to materials back then.
Right.
And studied 2 cities in every state in the union to figure out the best place to start a business. And I think I was just stalling because I was afraid. Ended up picking Greensboro. It was between Greensboro and LA, and I wasn't going to LA to live. So I went to Greensboro and started, and that's what I did. And I started frying pork skins and making cheese curls out of a little 1,500 square foot bay. And back then, Brent, we would take the product, put it in a car, drive down the street and sell it to a local store. And then, it was old school stuff.
Old school. But yeah, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to build a story. And back then, there were a lot more opportunities to do it back then because there were a lot of independent grocers and things like that.
Right.
And you learn the trades that way. You learn what not to do. Everything you did wrong was tuition. And we didn't have any money to speak of, so it was hand to mouth almost immediately.
Yeah.
And just about a year after we started, the trade wars started, shelf slotting allowances started, and small guys started getting wiped out left and right. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't ready to quit yet. I was just getting started.
Right, yeah.
The stores I'd sold were going, Phil, I don't know what to tell you, but, we don't care I don't care if you put used tires or old socks up there. We got to have the slotting fees. We're selling real estate.
Right.
And I couldn't do it. I went back and was about to close. I'm growling and angry. And somebody from Texas called me and said, hey, this company's looking for a diet snack and nobody can do it, but I know you got some technical prowess. And it turns out it was Weight Watchers.
Wow.
They gave me some specs and I started sending samples off to them. I'm not hearing anything. I'm getting ready to lock the doors, turn off the phones, and I get a call late one afternoon from VP of Heinz, who owned Weight Watchers at the time. And he's going, who are you? And I told him, and he said, well, we haven't had anybody that can hit the spec of what we're looking for in a diet snack, and everything you send in is working. Can I come speak with you? And I said, you better hurry up because the lights are going off. And they flew into our tiny little bay. I mean, it's like 1,500 square feet, and they didn't leave. And they brought in attorneys and signed contracts and reinvented who I was. We developed and launched 26 products for them over a year and a half.
Wow.
Leading to then, and this stuff was terrible. You got to know it was just awful. They didn't care because everybody thought it was going to be a fad.
Right.
This isn't going to last. Nobody's going to eat this unless they absolutely have to. So just make this dog food go away, and at least the nutritional panel was right.
Right.
eventually this fad didn't disappear, and people would leave Weight Watchers and go to Nutrisystem or Physicians before long, and they always thought they came right back to us. I would say over the next 10 years, we'd launched well over 100 brands internationally.
Wow.
Out of what became 3,000 square feet. And we're working double shifts and all this, and they're going, we'd say, we really ought to consider growing this line some. And everybody said the same thing. Nah, it's just going to be a fad. Don't do it. You'll just go broke. Well, that went on for 25, 30 years. And then the story of the company is eventually I discovered that I'm getting older. Since the early 80s, mid 80s, over half our staff have been people with disabilities. One of the things that I relish doing is things that everybody says can't be done. And one of them was
that entrepreneurial spirit right there. Yeah, you tell me I can't. Guess what? I'm going to show you I can.
Tell me you can't do this. We had happened to be on TV because we'd made the pork skins for the GOP convention. Don't ask me how that happens. It's some of the craziest stuff in the world. And when I was making it, the TV cameras showed up and everybody working the plant disappeared because they didn't want to be seen on TV or by the law. And I'd gone through small companies. I'd gone through like 200 employees in a year because people were hiding all the time in small companies.
Yeah.
Got invited to a Voc Rehab. They saw me on the newspaper, called me up and said, we got a job fair where you come interview folks. I didn't know who Voc Rehab was, but I was used to interviewing people all the time and ready to get out of the plant. So I said, yeah. I went down there and interviewed a guy who was legally blind, severely obese, and had huge cognitive disabilities, bragging about cleaning bathrooms at a Holiday Inn third shift. But the Holiday Inn was closing. And I'm thinking to myself, if he can brag about that, what have I got to lose?
Right.
So I hired him on the spot, and he changed the universe for our company. He came in, he's blew circles around people, he's laughing, he's having fun. Everybody's telling me, oh, Phil, you can't hire individuals like that. They're too expensive, can't do this, can't do that. And what happened was every time somebody realized somebody with a clear disadvantage was outperforming them, they either got better or quit.
Right.
And every time they quit, I just called somebody else. I said, send somebody else down. And within 6 months, over half our crew were individuals nobody wanted to hire and our efficiencies went boom, 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 and allowed me to focus on sales. And so anyway, that led to today. And I realized this contract manufacturing is a fun roller coaster, but it's a roller coaster. And I got now 30 families dependent on us. And this company knew I had to build a brand. I knew what needed to be done in the Better For You world, the networking, it's easy to find information, and I was around launches all day long, so I knew what was missing. And nobody wanted to invest the money. I was dealing with companies that were capital equity groups. They weren't interested in sustainable things. They wanted things they could flip fast. And so there was a window, and I took it. I cashed everything in, Brent, 7 years ago and started over while everybody around me was doing this. Yeah. What are you thinking? So,
you can't help yourself, right? The entrepreneur, you got to start something next.
It was like, you haven't learned enough yet. And I said, well, this is like a cosmic do-over. And I cashed it all in to launch this brand, knowing that I was going to be going up against the very guys that had all the money that were buying this bait. I said, that's all right. We're going to do it the old-fashioned way, one beauty parlor and one bait shop at a time.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the day, we still make for other companies because we have to pay the rent.
Yeah.
I pour everything into the brand, and we're probably in about 4,000 stores now nationally. 2 years ago, we got named Exporter of the Year by the state of North Carolina, selling our brand Wicked Crisp. And a part of the reason that happened is, again, being an entrepreneur.
Right.
It was easier to sell in the Congo than it was to sell down the street.
Yeah.
So I do this, and we became kind of export geeks. You become students of what you have to learn and where you go. So that's where we are today, and I'm still hustling the brand every day.
I love it. So what's the vision going forward? Where do you want to take the company?
Well, my goal is to gift my company to the employees in my retirement, if that ever happens, because the whole idea behind the brand was to have a community company that could outlive it had to be bigger than me.
Yeah.
So the goal is to get Wicked Chris to enough accounts and enough hurdles in enough different venues that it sustains itself. It gets boots and traction. We're probably halfway there now. And what I'm having to do, Brent, is reinvent myself because the things that worked 25 years ago don't work now. Some of it does. I can still go down the street and sell somebody, but it's not the same.
Doesn't move the needle the way it used to.
You can't do it. I never take pictures of myself, have selfies, do all that stuff. I'm a social media voyeur just because I get bored, but I didn't appreciate how much people use electronic systems and commerce systems now as a way of life.
Yeah.
I think it was, I've had a few epiphany moments where I found out that my daughter hasn't been in a grocery store in 5 years and that kind of stuff. And I think when COVID came around, it was kind of a wake up call that people they're not buying the way they used to. Some of the things that we're selling now that have become very popular would not have been sustainable 10 years ago. People are eating differently. One of our products is a sweet potato. It's a sweet flavored vegetable chip, for example, and 15 years ago, you couldn't sell that.
Right.
They taste great, but it had to accompany a meal or a beverage or this or that. And so sweet products always crashed as soon as they got in somebody's house. Now it's way up here, and it's because people graze all day, they eat differently. So I have to relearn all this. Our company has to relearn all this. We're focusing really heavily on e-commerce, trying quickly to catch up because we sell a ton through e-commerce every day.
I'll bet you do.
Oh my gosh! And I'm going, what was I thinking? Again, so that's the kind of thing that I'm really relearning all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's been the biggest learning, right? Is it the brand? Is it the channels? What's the biggest thing that you've taken away from this?
To me, the learning curve that's been tricky is how to stay relevant and what is genuinely relevant and important. And then combining that with some things that are inarguably still fundamental in function.
Yeah.
So, for example, our demographics, who shops and who buys, hasn't really changed much in 25 years. Guys really still aren't much in the shopping world, despite the fact they go into stores and stuff. Yeah. Knowing and understanding who your customer is. The hard part and the learning curve is how do you remain relevant in that universe and what is functionally relevant and what isn't? Where are you wasting time and maybe even hurting yourself? Learning to be cautious because the communication is so different now.
Yeah.
Being careful what you say, when you say, where you say it, and with whom you're trying to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't guess it's any different than marketing and advertising was 25 or 50 years ago, but the difference is it's instant now as opposed to somebody got to study an ad in a paper for 3 weeks before they stuck it in Life magazine. Yeah. And decide this one's perfect.
Yeah. And there's just so many more places that people live online, and you got to figure out where your customers live.
Exactly.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. And right when I think I'm starting to understand that somebody in my peer group or somebody else that's in the food business, for example, come to me and tell me they made all their money on Instagram, never sold anything anywhere else, I'm going, I didn't know you could sell on Instagram.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's just.
So a couple of things for you, right? So I've had a lot of CPG folks on recently, and a couple of things that are really interesting. TikTok shops for sure, and what I've been told is that the second half of this year will be the beginning of live selling on social, which is totally different, and it's because I think that consumers resonate with brands more than ever. So the story behind your brand that you've already told about, hiring people with disabilities and wanting to lead your company to the employees, like people will resonate with that. And I feel you got to get that out there because
Yeah.
Different than my generation, right? Your generation, that where the brand loyalty was not the same. These generations coming up, it matters more to them than anything. And I did
Oh, yeah.
not realize that until I started talking to people like you. And it makes a lot of sense.
It does, and I've learned that, and trying to figure out again. It goes back to the complexity of how to integrate that into a new communication tools. Buyers now not only care what they're buying, but who they're buying it from,
Yeah.
and that's a big deal. It's funny because for 25, 30 years, I never told a soul that our crews were individuals with special needs.
Right.
And in fact, we would have customers come and visit. I'd be bringing them into the plant, touring, talking, walking, head turn around there at a dead stop, 20 feet behind me with their mouth gaping open, looking at the staff. And they'll go, why didn't you ever tell anybody this? And I said, well, I don't want people to think I'm doing this for the business. I'm doing this for personal reasons because,
Yeah.
because I can. And I think this is where the answer to life is people
I love it.
build change, and we're allowed to color outside the lines because nobody told us, that we couldn't. And I didn't want anybody to ever assume I'm taking advantage, I'm this, I'm that. I didn't want to use it as leverage. Like you had mentioned, now trying to make people aware this is what we are. Oftentimes I'm embarrassed talking about it because I don't want them to think I'm trying to build a.
Well, you know what? Let me change your perspective there, right? Because I get what you're saying, right? Because it's not why you did it, but it is the engine behind your brand. So all you're doing is telling the story. And I think there's nothing wrong with that.
And I'm with you now, and I see it. And the thing that really changed my attitude about that was I was being invited by different governors. I ended up serving on a lot of national nonprofit boards. I was the chair of the largest nonprofit board in the United States, appointed by a president. And I was appointed as an experiment. They never had a civilian on this board, and within 7 years, I was chair of the board. But it was because I wasn't from government. I was used to getting things done. So
Yeah.
go in there and then say, shall we do this or this or this? If they want red and they want blue, it ends up being purple. And I said, pick something and let's find out.
All right, let's just go, anyway, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that aside, what had happened is companies were starting to call me, having hired people, and saying this would never have happened had I not talked to you or seen this or seen that. It really changed our universe. Every time that I get something like that echoing my way, then I realize, I need to get the word out. People need to understand, the universe is huge out there, and there's a whole lot of people. Just imagine being told you can't participate in anything. Right. You can't have a job. You can't have a paycheck from an early age.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Come on. I have employees now that do things you can't believe, and we'll have parties during the holidays and things. Their parents will come and want to know what their son or daughter is doing, and I'll explain it, and they'll say, no, not that. My son David. I said, no, David's doing all this. He does all these allocations on these shifts and stuff. He can't do that. Well, don't you tell him that.
Exactly. Because he's doing it, right.
You're going to mess him up.
I love it. Hey, shine a light, man. That's the way it works, right? If you would have told me I was doing a year ago, I'd be doing a podcast, I would have told you you're crazy, right? I mean, Phil, that's what I mean. Like, things change and you adapt and you move on as an entrepreneur, and you figure out that, hey, look, the world wants to consume things differently, so turn into it.
Yeah, and we're discovering. So the next tricky part that I got to work through that I'll figure out is that we have a lot of fans. Wicked Chris, Willie Nelson found Wicked Chris driving somewhere on his tour. I get a call one day, a couple of years ago, whenever his birthday party was. This is an agent from California. I said, yeah, sure. And I hung up. Yeah. And he calls back and says, don't hang up. I'm Willie Nelson's agent. He wants Wicked Chris for his birthday celebration. He bought half a truckload of snacks for his birthday. So I'm still trying to get photos I can post. And of course, their agents are having nothing to do with that. Right. There's a monetary value on everything. And we have a lot of that going on. We're in studios in California because a lot of people that have great influence in certain groups love this product. I have to figure out how to reel that in and use it with my skinny wallet. That's the tricky part.
Yeah, I totally get it. So let me ask you kind of a open-ended question, because I know you're turning into some of the emerging tech, right? And especially on the operations side. But where do you think most companies are wasting time and money right now that they maybe not even realize? Because you're digging in and you've rolled up your sleeves and you're seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, I think that just being able to accept that commerce models are changing dramatically and quickly, not just at the wholesale and production level, but at the consumer level, and finding ways to adapt and reinvent yourself, in those processes, maintain that measure of flexibility. And I think a lot of companies, I think there's a lot of money wasted on driving sales into a specific market or certain ad and never really reaching your customer. Somebody's pockets are getting lined, but it's not building your brand. It's almost like a ladder, if you can think of it that way, and learning what steps to avoid to get buried. One of the ways that I survived, Brent, through all the years was I learned not to go underwater. Yeah, I didn't buy something unless I could pay for it because I didn't know when my next paycheck was coming. I've helped more brands launch products that vaporize over a year or two because they're using these traditional models, figuring they can slip their way into certain accounts and become sustainable, and they're missing the basics. And the basic is the customer. How do you get to that customer? How are you conveying that message? All things that we talked about. And is your product something the customer wants? I have a lot of companies that I work with that spend an awful lot of money on something, didn't do the basic homework. They lied to themselves. So find out if it's something that is generally there's a place in the market for it. If there isn't, you're throwing a lot of money down a hole. And it does happen here a lot. I deal with some Fortune 500 companies, and I'm sitting there going, I had a guy wanting to get in it, and I won't get specific, but I knew it was a market he was getting into where he didn't stand a snowball's chance of making it. And he had $500,000. And I said, just give me the $500,000. I'll give you $50 a month for the rest of your life. That's what you're going to make doing this.
Yeah.
And he goes, what? He got mad and left. He lost all his money. He lost a lot more than that. And they're not paying attention to the big canvas end game.
Right.
They see these maneuvers.
Yeah.
And you go,
yeah. And it makes you scratch your head. The longer you're in business, owning business, and in an industry, I think that the more wisdom you get about, and you're like, I wish I had this then, right? Because you start to, because the lens you have today, and again, you only get it as an entrepreneur by going through the valleys, right? You don't learn as much in the peaks. Like, it's great, the peaks, but you get your education in the valleys.
Yeah. And there have been some really, really deep valleys where lights are off and you're just pretty sure you're done. And a true entrepreneur is never done.
Never.
If you you'll figure out a way to bounce through it and get through it, and you'll learn how to build those roller coasters. I like to think of it as tuition, and you have to take those lessons and listen carefully. You can't lie to yourself. You can't make excuses when you do something that was off. You've got to step back and look at it and understand why.
Yeah.
And try not to make the same mistakes twice, and I think that's key too to learning. You've got to be willing to learn. You have to be flexible. You tell somebody, no, I don't do this. I pack raisins now. I do all kind of goofball stuff. So my rule still is somebody calls me right now and says, can you carve avocados and put them in Ziploc bags in a can? I say, of course.
Right.
And then I hang up the phone and say, I wonder how we're going to do that. But you don't know where your business is going. You may have thought, I thought I was going to be a veterinarian.
Right.
In fact, I wish my first job had been boat building or fishing or something.
Right. You'd be in a different thing.
You got to be a snack food entrepreneur. It's what you learn. It's what you get good at. I don't think it matters what you're doing. You do it well.
Right.
The one thing I've learned through all this that's worth mentioning is that if money is your metric, everybody I know that's launched a business, money is your metric, you're destined for failure. Yeah. If you do things well, the money will come. If you did your own work and you're executing properly, you just hang in there because it will work. If you're chasing cash and that's your target, you and everybody else just keep looking over your shoulder. It's not,
Yeah.
money is not the metric to success. It will come and you will get it if you do well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Phil. It's the whole impetus of, again, why we started the podcast. It's how can we help more founders and CEOs by bringing them more resources to accelerate their growth. And if you give, you'll get, right? But to your point, it has to be about something that you're passionate about, because the money will follow. I totally believe that, right? But if you're right, if you're just chasing dollars and metrics, and again, if you're in PE and VC, again, no offense to y'all, and I totally get it. You guys they're really smart people, but it can't always be about that. The VC and PE firms that I seem to resonate more with, it's about the business, and the metrics just come after it. The ones that are just completely, hey, I want to get this thing turned around in 2 or 3 years and flip it, and that's not anything the reason why I'm doing this.
For everyone that did well on that, the guy behind him did terrible.
Exactly.
I have had second generation when they finally figure out they bought a pig with lipstick. I don't know how you didn't see this.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, to me, it doesn't matter what you're doing, do it well. If you do it well, there's room for you to be successful.
Yeah, I take one of my favorite football coaches, he says all the time, is bloom where you're planted. And I just totally buy into that, right? Bloom where you're planted. And so it means, wherever your feet are on the ground at that point, do the best job you can and do it well.
Absolutely.
So I got another question for you, right? I told you I was going to ask you about the AI impact. And I know you're using AI in several different ways across your company, because the smaller and the more lean you are, I think the more impact AI can help you, right? So tell everybody on the podcast about you, because you have a little bit different take, which I love.
Okay, so AI for me, because we're very intimate. Small companies are intimate. Mm-hmm. We walk down the hall from one another. When something breaks, I'll show you my busted up hands. But everybody, it's an all-in scenario.
Right.
So systems that a lot of people think of AI as administrative and systems that integrate into the company. And for us, it's become a powerful tool in much more unique ways. Being able to find solutions fast, using it as a working tool during the day. Something goes wrong, something breaks, this is lost. How do I quickly get this? How do I get that? Answering questions that used to take a week to figure out. If you could get the right person on the phone, AI goes boom. And then you learn how to hone those tools. I teach my crew that helps me in sales and in QA and things like that. They're old school because a lot of them are used to working old school ways. I say, no, go ask Google, whoever, well, that's AI. Well, yes, but read it, ask it again if you find out. Because I'll
dig a little deeper, refine it. Yeah.
They'll get a goofball answer and come to me and I'll say, read me your question, because the problem was probably the question, not the answer. Yeah. And they're learning to communicate. So AI has helped them communicate a lot better. They learn to hone their thought and get to a big canvas question quickly and not get lost in weeds. And then I use it for everything, to find materials, to look for substitutes for something in a hurry. How can I physically jump this wire to here without shorting X through a neutral and blah, 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 and all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. It works. What it does is you have to have some measure of understanding of it, but we use it as a physical tool all day more than as a broad system for inventories, this or that. And it's been fantastic.
I love it.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Really changing operational universes.
Yeah. And so what you're hitting on, and you and I were talking before the podcast, but for everybody else listening to this, right, the operational impacts that can free up resources cannot be understated. And it's funny, because of conversations like this, Phil, we've actually changed some of the things that we offer for that reason, to go, how can we help somebody simply, right? Try something simpler, right? And figure out and measure it. And then how does that move the needle? And I really think that is where we are with it. And it's really, what can your mind figure out in that process? Because usually entrepreneurs do think, like, when you get into operations, you're thinking in steps, right? Is there a step in that process that you like, man, if we could eliminate that, we could save 40 hours a week or 40 hours a month, right? 10 hours a week. Like that's how you have to think about it.
Yeah, and that's that's basically because we're in, when you're small, you're in survival mode all the time, despite the fact you may not recognize it. And so you're always looking I believe in keeping things simple. And when people talk about AI and all this stuff, they think you're making it complicated, but it's also a way to create, it's a tool that allows you to get from point A to point B in the simplest fashions. And on a day-to-day basis, it finds itself things that sometimes functionally you go, oh my gosh, we're 4 hours into this and still trying to figure out a way to do X. Has anybody bothered to beg the question? You're trying to pull this up or do that or do this. On the physical side, it has saved the company tons, and on the marketing side, it's helped me a lot because when I have a stump the chump moment in here trying to figure out how you sell on Instagram or whatever it is, instead of spending a week trying to network with the right people, AI it and get started.
Yeah.
It starts that process where I'm knowing already, okay, I don't want to go down this road. These guys aren't going to be in help to me. Now I understand what this alphabet soup meant. Yeah. I need to be over here doing this one. That kind of stuff.
I totally agree.
That's all coming out of AI that I would have never, I'd been going in circles for a month.
Yeah. It gives you it saves you a lot of time. It gives you a much better starting point, right? Simple as that. And like I said, everyone that watches this podcast knows we call them digital coworkers. They're just a great tool to work side by side.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's no way around that. I think that you'll learn that there is no stupid question. Yeah. And how quickly can I get the trajectory going this way or stop going this way because I know I'm going in the wrong direction. And it's just very powerful. And I use Google. I mean, I'm sure there's so many different tools out there that, again, I'm a newbie. So as much as I use this stuff, I'll end up, okay, Google. I know I just misspelled 3 words, but they get it.
Yeah, I totally get it. Well, Phil, thank you so much for spending time with us today. This has been really fun. I love the insights. I definitely want you to tell everybody how to try the Wicked Crisp or any other of your products.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Right now, e-commerce. We're Amazoning, but we're picking up every platform we can figure out and then some. We're working with some folks that are helping us to make everything more streamlined. So one way to get Wicked Crisp is if you're not in the South Atlantic region, you might find it at a TJ Maxx or Home Goods or something because I sell to everybody.
Yeah, I love it.
But if you go e-commerce, it's a good deal. We're shipping it out of here. We make it fresh every day. And when we get an order, we process it right then and out the door it goes. So,
what's the best website for them to go see? Because we'll put the links below.
Amazon. It still dials into, a lot of them dial into Amazon. It's still probably our primary,
Excellent.
We have a lot of new sites we're trying to get started with, but a lot of them slide and stream right back into Amazon. They're probably the easiest to get things fast.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love it, Phil. We'll get this thing live and we'll hopefully get some people, we'll put the Amazon links to some of your products in there as well. So thanks again, Phil, for sharing your insights. If you're listening to this and you just want to explore how AI can do little things like what Phil and I talked about, we'd love to talk to you. It's again, we don't pitch. We just want to help. And if there's a brainstorm we can have, just comment below growth and we'll help. We'll just get you on a quick call and find out if we can help. But as always, we love talking to our founders and CEOs and leaders across these great industries. So Phil, thank you for spending time with us today.
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Anytime you need anything, just let me know. I'll be here. We're working.
I love it. Well, hey, that wraps up our episode, Future-Proof What Matters and Automate the Rest. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future-Proof Podcast.